All right, undercoverage. All right, so here now there's sources of bias. So some of this, in addition to the voluntary response and the convenience bias. What the heck is going on here? Okay, undercoverage is that some portion of the population is left out. And basically the voluntary response, this occurs in the voluntary response sample and the convenience sample. All right, they both leave out people. The voluntary response sample leaves out people who don't feel strongly enough or people who don't see the invitation, and the convenience bias, we're leaving out people that are not convenient to get to. This can occur even if people are trying to take a really good survey. There might be portions of the population that are just harder to get access to. People who don't have phones, although that's getting smaller and smaller now. All right, people without phones, people who don't answer phones. So even if you use randomization to pick phone numbers, there's a certain set of the population who wouldn't answer. And if that group who doesn't answer feels differently than the rest of the population, then your sample is going to be biased. All right, non-response bias. This is, any survey can have this, any sample. Can have non-response bias. And this is basically, you invite people to take your sample and they basically say no thank you, or they hang up, but they don't respond. So some don't respond. So again, if the people who choose not to respond, if they are different, are different than the general population, right, then they're left out. So then the sample will be biased toward those who respond. Okay, response bias. This is something that happens when people respond. All right, so this is something that will any kind of biased, something that can influence how people respond. All right. Here's some examples. Let's say the wording of the questions. In fact, if you ask the same question, but with different words, different types of words, you're going to get different proportion of people supporting something or against something. Which is something that's kind of crazy, is actually the order of the answers. So people are more likely to pick, like if you have a multiple choice, people tend to pick the first one that sounds good. So if you have an answer D, it hardly ever gets picked. So what you can do to avoid this is you can randomize the order of the question, or it randomized the order of the answers. All right, so basically, for the first person, their ABCD would be different from the second's ABCD, and the third person, and so on, so that you don't have that. So that can be avoided. Who's doing the asking? All right. If you ask a question where people will want to lie, so there's a study that a group did, and basically they asked people, did you go to church on Sunday? And they got a certain percentage of people who said, yeah, this is what percentage, so this percentage of people said they went to church on Sunday. Another separate sample, they asked people on a Sunday, what did you do today? And so then if they happen to mention church, then it got on there. So there was a huge difference between the proportion who said they went to church and the proportion who did go to church. So for whatever reason, even if it's an anonymous survey, people tend to lie and write what they think they should have done, or maybe, oh, I usually go to church or whatever, but they lie. And if you ask them about something that's illegal, they're definitely going to lie, right? So definitely tons of ways to have response bias.